Hello everyone, we'll begin now.
Chu Patu Dani Kapsuchi Dagi Jinso Ki Pesanam Ki Tola Penshil Sangye Drupa Sho Sangye Chetong Soki Chon La Chanchu Patu Dani Kapsuchi Dagi Jinso Ki Pesanam Ki Tola Penshil Sangye Drupa Sho Sangye Chetong Soki Chonam Chanchu Patu Dani Kapsuchi Dagi Jinso Gi Pesanam Ki Tola Penchil Sang Dupa Sho Sam Shan Tam Shan Dewa Tong Dewe Kyu Tong Pa Kyu Chi Tu Ne Tong Tu Ne Ki Kyu Tong Lwa Kyu Chi Nhiều Nel Me Pe Dewa Tong Pa Tong Min Lwa Kyu Chi Nye Rin Cha Dong Tong Lwe Ton Yom Shen Po La Pa Kyu Chi Palan Sawe Lama Rinpoche Dagi Chiwa Peme Chula Kadrin Shenpe Kone Jesu Te Kusun Tu King A Drup Sal Tu Sal Cham Den De Cham Pe Yang La Chak Sal Gongi Lo Che Trim Ni Trin Ne Ta Nam Da Krab Se Ji Nian Den Que Je She Se She Ni Ki Tu Ka Bam Zim Gong Dang Si Pe Tsa Na Mari Min Tum Dung Ner Ge Si Wei Do Tso Kun La Bu Chi Dan Se Yan La Du Chu Yang Den So Do Ta Cha Do Nya Mo Ni Lo Le Ki Sha Do Do Ze Ching Marik Me Sa Do Nya Nyo Go Chi Nye Je Ze Ren Dui Nam De Ne Da Shi Sa Chu Ta Sa Nyen Ten Li Zo Gyal Se Tu E Kum Chu Da Chu Dan Chu Ni Gen Tre Da Klu Mu Sa Jan Pe Yang La Du Se Den Ke Ki Ser Gir Da Klu Ti Mu Min Pa Rab Sen Ne Katan Te She Shu Lu To Pa Lu Je Pa Pe No Sel Tu Sa. Alors pour les
For those who are joining us for the first time in this Clarity and Compassion course, we'd like to offer a short presentation on the text that we are presenting today. It's a text that was composed by the first Mipham Rinpoche. It's entitled Entry to the State of a Pandita. We'll present this text based on the teaching that Khenpo Chödrak Rinpoche gave here at Dagpo Kagyu starting in 2010. We repeat Khenpo's teachings of this text. The author of this text is the first Mipham Rinpoche, who was named Jamyang Namgyal Gyaltso. He was a Tibetan Buddhist master who lived in the 19th century. He was extremely learned. He was also accomplished in meditation practice. During his life, Mipham Rinpoche focused a great deal on the practice of Manjushri and met Manjushri face to face. Following a 21-year-long retreat, he composed numerous treatises based on the accomplishment of his practice. These works make up 38 volumes. The Entry Toward the State of a Pandita is one of these treatises. The treatise that we are studying, the Entry to the State of a Pandita, is a shastra that belongs to the basket of the Abhidharma. There are 3 baskets that gather all of the Buddha's teachings, the baskets of the sutras, the Abhidharma, and the Vinaya. This basket belongs to the basket of the Abhidharma. What is explained in this text? All knowable phenomena in their vastness as much as in their depth or profundity. This text is made up of 3 parts. The first part covers the 10 modes of being, the second part covers the 4 seals, and the third part covers the 4 types of perfect knowledge. When we talk about knowable phenomena of vastness, this refers to the 10 modes of being. Knowable phenomena of depth concerns, for example, emptiness. In the context of this treatise, this refers to the 4 seals. Based on true knowledge of the 10 themes and the 4 seals, we will be able to unfold truly beneficial activity for others. In other words, we will be able to teach the Dharma. The 4 types of perfect knowledge are what allow us to teach the Dharma. Over the course of several clarity and compassion courses, we have begun going over the first part of this text, which explains the 10 modes of being. In the text, it says about these 10 modes of being: one who wishes to obtain discernment that determines the true mode of beings without error must train in the 10 modes of being, which are to be known in the way of a Pandita, as they are taught in the sutras and the great treatises. As this passage explains, the 10 themes laid out in this treatise not only present knowable phenomena in terms of their vastness, but also these 10 themes or 10 modes of being remedy 10 mistaken ways of grasping the self. These 10 mistaken ways of grasping a self concern 10 different ways of envisioning a self or identity. This notion of self is the opposite of the true nature of reality. It's a very strong idea that persists throughout our various lives. Why is it useful to remedy self-grasping? Because self-grasping is responsible for our wandering in samsara and thus our suffering. For example, based on this self-grasping, we will develop afflictive obscurations like ignorance, desire, and hatred aversion, and will act based on these afflictive obscurations, and we will accumulate non-virtuous actions which will lead us to experiencing suffering. If we truly wish to liberate ourselves from suffering, it is essential to remedy this self-grasping. In the previous Clarity and Compassion courses, we covered the first 3 themes or modes of being, the aggregates, the dhatus, and the ayatanas. Over the course of these 4 days, we'll begin to study the 4th theme, which is that of dependent arising. Someone is asking a question in the room. I have a request. You know the terms that you're using, but perhaps others, such as myself, don't know what you're talking about. Could you please briefly redefine the terms when you use them? This is part of the tricky thing. We can't really redefine the terms every single time, but I can try to give definitions for a few of the terms, and notably many things will be explained over the course of these 4 days, and feel free to ask questions if things aren't clear. So we'll begin the 4th theme, dependent arising. Dependent arising is the translation of tendril in Tibetan. Tendril is the contraction of a longer term, Ten Ching Chelwa Chungwa. This is the full title of this chapter that we're looking at. What is the meaning of this term? Ten Ching Chelwa Chungwa. Then refers to the support. Chelwa means connection or interaction, and Jungwa means to appear or manifest. So if we take the word den, the word support or supporting, this refers to causes and conditions. What supports is causes and conditions. And these causes and conditions, when they are connected, when they interact, they allow for appearance or manifestation. Shall I repeat it, or it's all right? These manifestations, apparitions, appearances, emerge, they last for a certain time, and then they cease to exist. These three characteristics of emerging or appearing, abiding or remaining, and then ceasing are the characteristics of all samsaric manifestation, of all of the phenomena of samsara. This process of appearance, abiding, and ceasing is the motor of samsara. Samsara being the cycle of existences. Korwa in Tibetan means going around, wandering from life to life, through different types of existences. It's also necessary to keep in mind that all the causes and conditions that are the support for the appearance of a manifestation, of a phenomenon, these causes and conditions are themselves dependent appearances or manifestations which are dependent on other causes and conditions. All of the causes and conditions that allow for a phenomenon are themselves manifestations that are dependent on other causes and conditions. This is precisely why we cannot establish any reality to any phenomenon. This is precisely why no phenomenon can be established as having true existence. We'll never find a cause or condition which is truly existing, that is at the origin of all that is present. These causes and conditions are always produced, will always appear based on other causes and conditions. This relationship is infinite. There is nothing independent. There is nothing in that sense real. Khenpo Rinpoche offers the example of a tripod. In a tripod, each of the legs is necessary. Otherwise, everything would fall down. The same goes for causes and conditions based on which appearances arise. If one of the causes or conditions is missing, then the phenomenon will not appear. It's absolutely necessary that all of the causes and conditions be present for a phenomenon to appear. If one cause or condition is missing, the phenomenon will not be able to appear. You can look at the outline of the text. There are two parts. The first is a summarized explanation, then a detailed explanation. We'll begin with the summarized explanation of dependent arising. In the text, if you don't have it, it's available at the small table by the sound area. Concerning the summarized presentation of the text begins, what is dependent arising? Inner and outer phenomena did not appear without cause. They are not self-arisen, nor did they appear from time, an all-powerful creator or some other cause, a permanent agent, which are not causes. They were born based on the coming together of their respective causes and conditions, which themselves are dependently arisen. This is what is called dependent arising. The declaration of such a principle is a unique approach, that of the Buddha's teaching. With the purpose of explaining this introduction that offers the essentials of this teaching, and in order to give us certain foundations to understand the rest of the text, the rest of this section, Khenpo Rinpoche began with a long explanation concerning schools of thought, what we call schools of thought. As it's said in the last sentence of the root text, dependent arising is a unique approach, which is that of the Buddhist teaching. In order to understand what this unique approach is and what differentiates it from other religious or philosophical currents, Khenpo Rinpoche started with a long introduction. It begins with an explanation of the two types of dependent arising. Then he gave an introduction to non-Buddhist schools of thought. Then he explained what a school of thought is. A school of thought, or what can also be called an established conclusion. Then he explained Buddhist schools of thought and their characteristics. And he concluded this presentation by explaining non-Buddhist schools of thought and their characteristics. We'll begin with two types of dependent arising. Khenpo Rinpoche explained that there are two modes of dependent arising. The first mode describes that based on a functional phenomenon, another functional phenomenon appears. So a functional phenomenon is something that has a function, as opposed to something that doesn't. General ideas, generalizations. If I pour water in a cup, for example, the cup will be able to contain the liquid. It has a function, it functions. But if I pour water into the idea of a cup, the idea won't be able to contain liquid. It's not functional. This first type of dependent arising, based on a functional phenomenon, another appears. This is what is called dependent arising.
Donc là, en fait, il s'agit de la relation causale.
This concerns a causal relationship where a functional phenomenon called cause produces its result, which is another functional phenomenon.
Et il faut qu'il y ait une cause pour qu'un effet se produise.
A cause is necessary for an effect to be produced. Therefore, the relationship between these two is a relationship of dependence. If there is no cause, then there won't be an effect. So the effect then depends on the cause. Based on a seed that we've planted, a seedling will appear. The seed and the seedling are functional phenomena, and the seedling depends on the seed. That's the first type of dependent arising, which is called dependent arising. Based on a functional phenomenon, another appears. Next, we come to another type of dependent arising, which is called dependent designation. Based on a functional phenomenon, its opposite, another functional phenomenon, will be designated. To put it another way, dependent designation refers to the fact that based on a phenomenon, its opposite is designated. For example, good and bad, short and long. These things only exist in relation to each other. For example, if we look at these three fingers, the ring finger appears to be the shortest. Why is this finger short? Because next to it there's a longer finger. And if we are only being shown the ring finger that's neither short nor long, the attributes short and long do not exist within the object. They are produced solely in relation to one another. Dependent arising refers to these two modes of dependence, which are dependent arising and dependent designation. If you have questions, please wait for the microphone. That said, if it's a question where you really haven't understood and you need to ask a question to continue with the subject, then I think it's all right. But in general, if you can hold your questions until the end of the session, it helps. What I didn't understand is that basically what you're saying is it's a comparison. I'm comparing with something else. But it's not necessarily a phenomenon. A ring finger exists, okay, and I'm attributing a characteristic to this finger. It's short in relation to another finger. But what I don't understand is why the phenomenon is short. In this case, khenpo is talking about a functional phenomenon. So in this case, the short aspect of the finger will appear because there's a long finger next to it. It's not that a functional phenomenon will appear based on another one, like a seedling that appears based on a seed. That's dependent arising in and of itself. In this case, it's a dependent designation where we name things in relation to a phenomenon. So in this case, it's the short aspect of a phenomenon that appears because next to it there is a longer finger, the middle finger. But indeed, these are things that don't truly exist within the object. Khenpo employed this term, a specific phenomenon. Well, we'd have to perhaps check with him, because they don't really exist. They're more like ideas. But maybe that's why we're talking about functional phenomena, so maybe that's why he said specific phenomenon. But it's true, it's not something that truly exists within the object. They're not just appearing on their own, they're in relation to an object. If we don't analyze phenomena, all phenomena will be defined as dependent arising or dependent designation. Individuals who haven't thought about these details, who haven't analyzed or examined all of this, they'll just live their lives. And for these people, causes and effects are real. Short, long, good, bad, all these things are real. They'll have a notion of dependent arising or dependent designation and dependent designation, but they'll think that everything that appears is real. No one believes that things happen randomly. Everyone knows that if we plant a seed, it will yield a plant. The same is true for opposites, good, bad, short, long. We know that short comes from the fact that there's something long next to it. But if we don't really think about what's there, we'll think that everything that's involved in dependent arising and in dependent designation is real. We'll think that the cause and the effect truly exist. However, if we carry out examination, analysis of the process of dependent arising, we'll see that neither the cause nor the effect truly exist. We'll see that causes and effects only exist in relation to one another, in dependence with one another. If we analyze, we'll see that there is no true nature to what is involved in this process of cause and effect. As we saw, things come from causes and conditions. In this sense, they are not independent. What is not independent is considered to be not real, not having a true nature in Buddhism. And these causes and conditions themselves depend on other causes and conditions. Therefore, we can never find anything independent, and therefore, all things are free from true reality. It was said, if we analyze, we'll see that all phenomena exist in dependence with other phenomena. And in the history of humanity, only Shakyamuni Buddha really understood dependent arising. Now we'll see what the idea is in other religious and philosophical systems. These other philosophical systems chose two positions. They came up with two positions to describe inner phenomena and outer phenomena, how they appear. The first position is either phenomena appeared without any cause. Either phenomena appeared without a cause, in other words, randomly. The second position is that they were produced by something completely different, like a god, a creator god, for example. The first proposition is without a cause, and the second position is phenomena appear based on a cause. From their point of view, because from a Buddhist point of view, this cause is not a cause. Then Khenpo gives a bit more detail concerning non-Buddhist schools of thought. The holders of non-Buddhist schools of thought affirm that outer phenomena like mountains, etc., such as inner phenomena like the five aggregates, which belong to one's personal continuity, appeared either without cause or from a cause that isn't a cause. That's what we just explained. Khenpo says that these schools of thought were initially presented in Indian traditions, but they've spread more or less all over the place these days. So there are those who believe without cause and those who believe in a cause that's not one. The systems of non-Buddhist thought can be classified into three categories. The first category of non-Buddhist schools of thought is those who say that phenomena appear without cause. These systems think that beings and the world and sentient beings appeared without cause. We call these systems of thought a nihilist view. For these individuals, for those who hold this thought, there's not a specific cause that produces a specific result. Things just appear. That's the first category of non-Buddhist school of thought. And this is those who think that phenomena appear from a cause that isn't a cause from a Buddhist point of view. In this category, there are two subcategories. So there are those who believe in the cause, and this cause is internal. And Khenpo gives the example of prakriti, so you can remember this term and we'll come back to what it is later. So concerning this internal cause, it is identified as being the cause of the universe and the beings who inhabit this universe. So this system talks about a supreme self that created all of this. As we said, this cause is not a god, it's a functional inner phenomenon. According to Buddhism, this inner cause does not exist. So this concerns those who believe in an inner cause, believe in a cause, and this is an inner cause. Then there are those who believe in a cause, but an outer cause. So still a cause, but in this case an outer cause. Khenpo said that this category includes numerous systems with various presentations. In any case, there is an outer agent that is seen as being the source of the universe and those who live there.
Et du point de vue bouddhique, donc, un univers et les êtres sensibles qui habitent cet univers ne sont pas comme sans cause.
So these are non-Buddhist points of thought, and from a Buddhist point of view, things do not appear without cause, and they also do not appear based on a cause that is different from beings and the world. The universe and sentient beings were not created without cause, nor from a cause that is not a cause. So, according to Buddhist thought, beings and the universe is a result of dependent arising, the synchronous appearance of causes and condition. So, to sum it up, there are different points of view based on different religions that explain the world and beings that inhabit it. There are schools of thought that affirm that beings and the world are there are those who think that there is no cause, those who think there's an inner cause, those who think there's an outer cause, and Buddhist thought holds that beings and the world appear based on dependent arising. Now Khenpo will explain what a school of thought is. We've talked about this for a little bit here, and we'll explain what it is. We also call a school of thought an established conclusion. As it was said, all philosophic systems of thought and religions have a point of view on reality and thus belong to a school of thought. The founders of these schools of thought reached a conclusion about the way they see the world and its inhabitants. This established conclusion is called a school of thought. An established conclusion or school of thought is tup ta in Tibetan. We'll explain these two syllables. So trup means established. In the term established conclusion, established refers to thinking that something is a certain way. We think that something is this way, is as such, based on writings and reasoning. For example, a person will, based on reasoning and writings, analyze reality, use their discernment, and determine that reality is as such, is this way. A conclusion is established. That concerns the syllable trup. For the syllable ta, this translates conclusion, which means that this person will not adopt another point of view. So, ta refers to the fact that we don't accept something other than the conclusion that was established. We remain with our final conclusion. This is why it's called a conclusion. . It's important to understand that a school of thought is different than a cultural tradition. The school of thought always implies discernment, logic, and reasoning, which is not the case for a cultural tradition. A cultural tradition does not imply higher knowledge nor logic, nor reasoning. An established conclusion, a cultural tradition appears based on habits of doing things in a particular region or country. If we reflect on these established conclusions, there are two types. There are non-Buddhist established conclusions and Buddhist established conclusions. Those who accept these different established conclusions are called the holders of the Buddhist view or holders of non-Buddhist view. What is an authentic Buddhist? In order for a person to be, or in order to be able to say that one is an authentic Buddhist, 4 characteristics must be present. These characteristics were established by 2 Indian Buddhist masters, Atisha and Ratnakara Shanti. First, I will share the list of the 4 characteristics and then there will be explanations. What is an authentic Buddhist? As we said, there are 4 characteristics. Such a person has good knowledge of the qualities of the 3 rare and supreme, the 3 jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, the noble Sangha. That's the first characteristic. Then, the second characteristic, such a person has a good knowledge of the particularities. For example, the particularities of the 3 jewels. The third characteristic is that such a person adopts and accepts the 3 jewels. This will be explained more after. The 4th characteristic is that such a person is not partisan of something else. In other words, they never abandon refuge in the 3 jewels. Before we give the explanations of the 4 characteristics, why don't we take a short break?
Voilà, c'est une pause silencieuse, ça dure quelques minutes.
It's a silent break just for a couple of moments, a couple of minutes. Now we'll come back to the first characteristic, knowing the qualities of the three rare and supreme well. This concerns having thorough knowledge of the qualities of the three jewels. Based on this thorough knowledge, the person can take refuge in the three jewels. It's not due to the influence of friends or because it's in fashion to be Buddhist that this person takes refuge in the three jewels. A person who does this is not an authentic Buddhist. That was the first characteristic. The second characteristic is knowing the particularities. What distinguishes the three jewels from gods? What distinguishes the Dharma from other religions? Here, the person has thorough knowledge of what distinguishes the Buddhas from gods of other religions. They know what makes a Buddha exceptional. They know why the Buddha Dharma is more profound, more eminent than other religions. They also know what distinguishes the Buddha Dharma from other religions. And they know what distinguishes the noble Buddhist Sangha from other religions. The Sangha is the religious community. The third characteristic, as was said, is adopting, accepting, taking refuge in the three jewels. An authentic Buddhist takes refuge in the Buddha by accepting him as being the absolute guide, the ultimate instructor who leads to enlightenment. They also take refuge in the Buddha Dharma by accepting that the Buddha's teachings are the path that leads to enlightenment. The person also takes refuge in the noble Sangha by accepting it as being the friend who helps with practice on the path to enlightenment. The fourth characteristic is not being a partisan of something else or something other, never abandoning refuge in the three jewels. A person having taken refuge in the three jewels, based on what was just explained, never thinks of turning away from it, not even for a fraction of a second. This person maintains their engagement, commitment to taking refuge in the three jewels, even at the price of their own life. A person who possesses these four characteristics is an authentic Buddhist. Khenpo specifies that some people have knowledge and an interest in the different points of view concerning the nature of reality explained in Buddhism, but they're not Buddhist. We've just explained here what a school of thought or an established conclusion is, and we also covered the four characteristics of an authentic Buddhist. In order to exemplify the fact that there are those who have enthusiasm for Buddhist viewpoints but are not Buddhist, Khenpo spoke about people who know the four seals, for example. The four seals being the central point of the Buddhist established conclusion. The four seals attest the Buddhist view. Certain individuals have acquired knowledge of the four seals, but this doesn't necessarily mean that they're Buddhist. Just because they know the four seals, this doesn't make them Buddhist. As we saw, someone who is an authentic Buddhist is someone who possesses the four characteristics that were just explained. Khenpo explained that there are four cases that can occur. The first case is when individuals have knowledge of a Buddhist school of thought. They've even taught these subjects in different institutions without necessarily possessing the four characteristics listed before. These people aren't considered to be Buddhist. Communicating one's knowledge of Buddhism doesn't make a person Buddhist. It's not sufficient. They also need to adopt the four characteristics stated just prior. The next case is Buddhists who don't necessarily have knowledge of the different schools of thought or established conclusions. So there are people who don't necessarily have knowledge of different established conclusions, but they don't necessarily have knowledge of all of the established conclusions of Buddhism. The next case is those who have these 4 characteristics listed previously and have knowledge of the established conclusions. So then there are those who have neither the 4 characteristics nor knowledge of the Buddhist points of view. Concerning Buddhist schools of thought, how many schools of thought are there in Buddhism? According to the Buddhist master Aryadeva, as well as the majority of Buddhist masters of India and Tibet, there are 4 Buddhist established conclusions. There are 2 that we'll find in the foundational vehicle. The Vaibhashika school of thought, or established conclusion. The second school of thought, or established conclusion, is the Sautrantika school of thought, or established conclusion. For those who are writing things down, Vaibhashika, Vaibhashika, Sautrantika, Sautrantika. Those are the 2 schools of thought of the foundational vehicle. The great vehicle also includes 2 schools of thought, or established conclusions. First, the Chittamatra school of thought, Chittaamatra. The second school of thought is the Madhyamaka school of thought, Madhyamaka. There are no other established conclusions besides these 4. All of the Buddhist established conclusions are included within these 4. It's 4:15. The next section is fairly long. Perhaps we can take the rest of our time for today to answer some questions. Do you have any questions about what was presented? Thank you very much, firstly, for explaining things. It's a lot easier to follow. It's not really a question, but it's an observation. I know people who have all of this knowledge that you talk about, that have a way of behaving that's not much like a Buddha, that's not very Buddhist. And I also know people who don't have any of this knowledge, who are really like Buddhas in action. Yeah, well, to be someone Buddhist in the context of this explanation, there were these 4 characteristics that were presented to describe someone who's Buddhist. Of course, there may be people who have extremely Buddhist extremely virtuous behavior who are not Buddhist, more so than some people who are Buddhist. It's not because someone has extremely virtuous behavior that they're necessarily Buddhist. The 4 characteristics that were listed are a description of what it means to be Buddhist. And of course, it's extremely positive to have extremely virtuous way of acting. Doesn't necessarily make a person Buddhist. A Buddhist school of thought is a synonym for established conclusion. How is it spelled in Tibetan? I've heard Drukata. I'm not sure. Can you... Oh, you want the phonetic? D-R-U-B space T-A. And so, coming back to the etymology, ta means drup means conclusion, and ta means established. Oh, sorry. No, it's the opposite. Drup is established and ta is conclusion. Can we go over the second characteristic again concerning what distinguishes Buddhism from other religions? It said what makes a Buddha exceptional. The second characteristic of an authentic Buddhist is a person who distinguishes, for example, the Buddha from gods, who knows what distinguishes a Buddha from the gods, what distinguishes Buddhism from other religions. What Khenpo said is that such a person knows what makes a Buddha exceptional. This person, such a person, knows the qualities of a Buddha that makes a Buddha exceptional. That make a Buddha exceptional. So there are 2 schools of thought in the Great Vehicle, Shittamatra and Madhyamaka. What's the difference between Madhyamaka and Madhyamika? The Madhyamika are the adepts of the Madhyamaka school of thought. Can you just clarify the idea of functional phenomenon and non-functional phenomenon? This concept of a non-functional phenomenon is a little tricky for me. Is this just about ideas and concepts, or are there other things in this category? It's not very clear. It's a subject all its own that was explained in the chapter on the ayatanas. I can see that, you weren't there. But we give these teachings regularly at Dagpo. There are courses throughout the year that go over all of these subjects, from the entry to the state of a Pandita. Ju Mipham Rinpoche really emphasizes the importance of these chapters because they help with meditation practice. You're welcome to come to one of these courses presenting the ayatanas if you have time. The public courses in Dagpo's program. And additionally, yes, indeed, the presentation of the ayatanas that was given last December is available online, I think. And just to give a short presentation, I won't be able to say much more, but a non-functional phenomenon, a specific phenomenon is a phenomenon in and of itself. For example, this table, there is the specific phenomenon that is known by visual consciousness. It will know the object as it is, and then mental consciousness, the intellect, will have knowledge of this object, but at a certain point there will be a conceptualization about what this table is, and then mental consciousness is no longer in relation with the object as it is. It's only in relation with or relating to a generic of the object, and this is a non-functional phenomenon. The table, phenomenon of the table itself, is a functional phenomenon. It has a functionality, but once mental consciousness represents to itself what the table is, then mental consciousness is no longer in a relationship with the table itself. It's only relating to an abstraction of the table, and in this sense, it is a non-functional phenomenon. I'm a little confused about the 4 schools of thought that were named, and then Hinayana, Vajrayana, Mahayana. How does this fit together? What's the difference? What's called the Hinayana refers to the foundational vehicle, and sometimes the literal translation is the lesser vehicle, but in fact it's not really lesser, it is the basis. That's why we also call it the foundational vehicle. Even the great vehicle adopts points of view from the foundational vehicle, not in terms of the school of thought, but in terms of understanding what samsara is, recognizing that samsara is suffering. This is common to all schools, all Buddhist schools of thought. So in the foundational vehicle, we find the Vaibhashika and the Sautrantika schools of thought, and then in the great vehicle we find the Chitramata and Chidamacha and Madhyamaka schools of thought, and the Vajrayana is part of the Mahayana. There are 2 approaches in the Mahayana, the Sutrayana and the Vajrayana. The Vajrayana is not different from the Mahayana. It's a subcategory of the Mahayana, and it's not a school of thought, it's a path or a vehicle. It'll be explained in detail tomorrow. This is in English.
Scientists
I won't retranslate the question, it was quite clear in English. Indeed, Buddhism will say that a first cause does not exist. There is no first cause. Saying that the Big Bang, so first scientists refuted the idea of a creator God. As you said, they replaced it with the idea of the Big Bang. Both Buddhism and science refute the idea of a creator God, but Buddhism will not accept this Big Bang as a creating cause. That would be at the origin of the world, because, as was said in relation to dependent arising, all causes and conditions come from other causes and conditions. There is never an ultimate cause that would be the origin of everything. Everything that is present arises from causes and conditions. There's never a beginning point where everything starts up. There were always things before that created what's present. Perhaps this phenomenon called the Big Bang occurred, but for Buddhists, it's simply arising from causes and conditions that were present beforehand that led to that. It's 4:30. I propose that we leave it here and we'll come back tomorrow. Sonamdi tamche senpani tamne pe chona pamche kikana chi pala chubai sipe tsune chuba chuba